All right, so in this video, we are going to contrast two different political views. And by the end of it, I want you to be able to figure out which one of the two has the most influence on the United States and the way our government is set up. Right? So first, we'll be looking at the ideas of Thomas Hobbes, who wrote about his political views in a book called Leviathan. So for each of these guys, we're going to see, okay, what did they think about humanity, the basic nature of man? What's the purpose of government? What's the best kind of government? And whether or not rebellion was ever allowed. So in Thomas's book, Leviathan, he argued that the nature of man is basically savage, brutish, violent, selfish. And he argued that way back in the distant past, that because we were so violent and savage and ruthless, that we needed government to protect us from each other, that we needed government to impose force, law, and order upon us. And so, since that is the case, according to Thomas Hobbes, if the purpose of government is to force law and order upon us to protect us from each other, then the best type of government is a monarchy, preferably some sort of absolutist monarch that can force us into law and order, which makes sense if the basic nature of man is naturally violent and selfish, like he argued. So this was probably pretty easy. Did he think rebellion was ever allowed? If yes, under what circumstances? No, he did not think it should be allowed because rebellion leads to chaos and disorder. That can lead down to lead to the breakdown of government, which could then end that law and order that has been forced upon us. And then we're right back to where we started in our very savage, brutish nature. Right? Now, opposed to that is John Locke and his two treatises of government. Now, in this book, John Locke said that the basic nature of man is good, and that in the distant past we lived in a state of equality. Right? Very different than what Hobbes said. So then, according to John Locke, what's the purpose of government? The purpose of government is to protect our natural rights. Rights that you are born with. Burn that into your brain. Not only will it be on your test, you'll hear it again when you take U.S. history. You'll hear it again when you take government in your senior year. So burn that into your brain. Natural rights, rights that you were born with. He said that those natural rights are life, liberty, and property, which should sound vaguely familiar to you. We say life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Right? So he said that the purpose of government is to protect our natural rights, to make sure that they are not violated. So he argued that the best type of government is one based on a social contract that has mutual obligations. Right? Certain things that the government has to do and certain things that we, the people, have to do, because it is a contract, an agreement between two parties, the government and the people. The government, they should protect our natural rights. Okay? We, the people, should obey the laws of the land. Okay? Now, he then argued that, say there's a government who begins to violate our natural rights. Instead of protecting our natural rights, they try to take away our natural rights. Well, think about how a contract works. If there's a contract between two people and one person violates the contract, well, then the contract is void. It doesn't count anymore. So the other person doesn't have to follow it either. So he argued that if a government violates our natural rights, let's say takes away our property unjustly, begins to execute people unfairly without trial, they violate our natural rights, and the government has broken the contract. Therefore, we the people don't have to follow our end of the contract either. Then we have the right to rebel. So did he think rebellion was allowed? Yes. Under what circumstances? If the social contract had been violated. This was what our founding fathers argued when we rebelled against Britain. We said our natural rights had been violated. When we wrote the Declaration of Independence, which was our justification for rebellion, the whole thing was about Britain has violated our natural rights, therefore they have violated the social contract, so we don't have to follow the social contract anymore, so we have the right to rebel and to create a new social contract, which eventually we do. We call it the Constitution. The Constitution is a written contract between we, the people, and our government. It says that we, the people, have to do certain things, like pay taxes, for instance, but the government protects some of our natural rights, like freedom of speech, for instance, and we argue the freedom of religion is a natural right that the government should protect and not violate. So, which one, Locke or Hobbes, had the greatest influence on our government? Well, it should be pretty easy at this point. We do not have a king, right? But we do have a constitution, which is just another form of a contract.